Reconnect and heal today. Welcome to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
Hello and welcome to Love Never Dies. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, founder of AskDrLove.com, the web's first relationship advice site since 1995. I'm so excited to bring you the new Love Never Dies radio show on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. As you probably know, for the past 2.5 years, the Love Never Dies show has been the most listened to hour on the Hay House radio network. And now the Love Never Dies show can only be heard on the Dream Vision 7 radio network, which airs live over WMEX 1510 AM Boston each second and fourth Sunday of every month. And the Love Never Dies show also airs every Wednesday and Thursday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Dream Vision 7 radio online, which broadcasts in 136 countries. If you're listening to the show live tonight and you have a question for me, or better yet, if you'd like me to help you begin your own dialogue with the departed, I'd love you to call me live at 866-338-9663, and that toll-free number works from U.S. and Canada. And if you're listening from Europe or other countries, you can call in using Skype. As you know, the Love Never Dies radio show is based on my Love Never Dies book, which shares the amazing true story of my spiritual reconnection with my beloved deceased husband, internationally renowned former Jesuit priest, Émile Jean Pain. Jean's astonishing after-death manifestations prove to me that our relationships aren't supposed to end in bodily death. And so I created my trans-dimensional grief method that brings my acclaimed conflict resolution methods to the world of after-death communication. The result is an unprecedented new method that offers you the first vehicle for reconnecting and making peace with the deceased. I always begin the show by sharing Jean's latest manifestations to give you an idea of what awaits you when you reconnect with your loved ones in spirit. As Jean told me right after he left his body, Jamie, let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others. This means that Jean's manifestations are meant for you too. They're meant to let you know that your loved ones in spirit are here with you too. They're just waiting for you to learn how to tune to the spirit channel in your brain so that you can send and receive energetic communications to and from the spirit realm, which is what I'm here to teach you to do. During these past 2 weeks, Jean and I have been on a speaking, teaching, and workshop tour in Florida. And over these 2 weeks, I've overseen more dialogues with the departed than I've ever done in my life. And how wonderful to have met all my listeners and fans in person, and how wonderful to have helped you all begin your own dialogues with your loved ones in spirit. Again and again during these past 2 weeks, I've seen that Jean hand-picks and hand-delivers each and every one of you and brings you right to me, wrapped in a nice little bow. And you're going to hear a little bit more about this in a couple seconds. Now, Jean's first manifestation occurred at the beginning of my time in Florida. I could just feel Jean was so happy to be with me on the tour. And I was speaking on my cell phone to a dear patient of mine named Dee. And I told her I can feel just how much Jean is with me at this moment. With that, Jean took over my cell phone and opened my Pandora app, which isn't accessible from the main screen on my phone. What I mean is I couldn't have accidentally hit the Pandora app and opened it since it's buried inside another app folder, which itself isn't on the main phone screen. And suddenly, after Jean opened the app, he began playing Summertime, his favorite song that I used to sing for him in order to celebrate his birthday or special occasions. And the image of the song stayed on my phone screen for hours. And I actually posted a screenshot of this image on my social media pages. If you want to see it, you can check out my pages, which are Ask Dr. Love on Facebook, Dr. Jamie Turndorf on Facebook, Love Never Dies book on Facebook, and now also Read the Calling on Facebook as well. Now, as I traveled from town to town it became clear to me that all the dialogues with the departed, all of them, fall into two categories. And I want to say this to you. This is the first time I'm actually spelling this out, so pay attention because this is really important. There are two kinds of categories of dialogues. The first are the dialogues with those who are still actively grieving as a result of a recent bodily loss of a loved one. I'll say that again. People who are actively grieving the bodily loss of a loved one need to dialogue in order to reconnect. Now, the second category of dialogues are with those who continue to have unfinished business with someone who left his or her body, oftentimes many years ago. Now, of course, there are crossovers since many people who are newly bereaved also have unfinished business, and that, of course, complicates their pain. Now, I'm going to give you a breakdown of the similarities and the differences between the newly bereaved dialogues and the dialogues of those who have unfinished business. And I'm going to also weave in some more manifestations from Jean as I talk about this. So, for example, after my keynote speech at Sarasota's Cosmic Center, I invited someone in the audience to come up and begin his or her dialogue with a loved one in spirit. Suddenly, a lovely woman, who I soon discovered became widowed only 7 months ago, put her hand up and asked to come up. She began her dialogue the way most people who are newly bereaved begin their dialogues, when they haven't reconnected yet. And I can tell you I've seen this thousands of times through all my live events, through the Hay House radio show. The first thing they say when they haven't reconnected is, "I miss you." Now, at this point, I asked her if she could hear what her husband was saying in response, and she said no. And I told her that he was saying, "I'm here, but you're just too sad to notice." Now, she said, the second thing that I hear in general when people haven't reconnected, are newly bereaved, haven't reconnected, they will say, "I miss holding you, I miss touching you, I miss feeling your arms around you," something like that. She said, "I miss holding you." Now, at this point, I heard an alarm bell ringing in my brain. And I asked her if she could hear what I was hearing. And she said, "I heard a bell go off like an alarm." Now, that's a wow, since she had not received any messages whatsoever from her husband in the last 7 months. So I asked her if she knew what her husband was saying. And she said, "I'm not sure." And I said, "It's a wake-up bell, girl. Wake up to the fact that I'm here." Now, at that moment, I looked at her chest, and I noticed that she was hardly breathing. Her lungs were literally frozen, stuck as a result of her grief. And that happens to you, because what happens is the pain and the crying literally locks up all the fascia. So I said to her, "Listen, spirit is born on the breath, and if you don't breathe, you can't feel him. Your grief has locked up your lungs." So I said to her, "Please breathe deeply." Well, nothing happened. It was a no hablo inglés situation. So then I said to her in a very loud voice, "Breathe, girl!" And I shocked her to the point that she gasped, which caused her lungs to fill up with a rush of air. And suddenly she burst into tears and said, "I feel you." So this was such a marvelous experience for her, for me, and for the audience. And so I want you to take note of this example, because this beautiful woman was endlessly grieving due to the fact that she hadn't reconnected with her husband in spirit. And she couldn't reconnect because she was literally not breathing. So if you're having trouble feeling your loved one's presence, and you're having trouble reconnecting, I want you to make sure that you are breathing. Please breathe. Now, also, keep in mind that I'm giving a gift now for everybody who signs up for my newsletter at AskDrLove.com. I'm sharing with you the Love Never Dies meditation audio, which contains every single meditation from the Love Never Dies book recorded in my voice, okay? Now, at the end of that event, in Sarasota. Here's the coolest thing. That beautiful woman came up to me and she said that my husband led her to see me. She said that she actually was guided to move from Miami to Sarasota the day before, literally move, so that she could meet me and have me help her reconnect with her husband. Talk about receiving validation again and again, that Jean hand delivers each and every one of you to me. We're just puppets on a string. We're just pieces on a chessboard. And it's our job to listen and allow Spirit to guide us where we need to go. Now, my next stop was a keynote address at First Unity in St. Pete, Florida. And that was the next night on St. Patty's Day. And after the talk, before I could even finish my first sentence, or my sentence in which I was inviting someone to come up on stage to dialogue, a woman's hand shot up so fast. And I thought, how did she know? I hadn't even gotten around to asking, but she was ready and in the front row, and she knew what I was going to ask before I asked. Now, this dialogue is a great example of the second category of dialogues. She wasn't newly bereaved. She had unfinished business with someone in spirit. And as we began her dialogue, the first words out of her mouth were, "For the past 10 years, I've been trying to forgive you." And she went on to say that her father committed suicide 10 years ago and left a note blaming her for his suicide. And she said that she felt terribly stuck. Now, it was clear to me that she was stuck precisely because she's been trying to force herself to forgive him. When you push down your anger, when you bury your anger in the shallow grave of forced forgiveness, you remain indefinitely stuck. The anger is still inside you. It's just gone underground. And don't fool yourself. The anger never dissipates. The anger never goes away. And the energy that you have to spend on trying to keep the anger buried keeps you stuck in all the feelings surrounding your unfinished business. And to get unstuck, I knew that I had to help this woman dialogue with her father and talk about her angry feelings. And as soon as she admitted her anger out loud, tears began to flow. The tears were the beginning of her emotional thawing out, which is necessary to getting unstuck. And after I dialogued with her, she said that 1 year ago, Jean came to her in her sleep and told her that I would be coming to Unity St. Pete 1 year later and that she must have me help her begin her dialogue with her father. And that's why her hand came up so fast. Jean had already told her that I would be inviting someone to come up and that she needed to be that someone. Now, on Sunday, I did a series of dialogues in a live Love Never Dies group workshop, and the reconnections and the healings were astounding. We laughed, we cried together, and everyone's life was transformed as a result of that group experience. Now, on Sunday, I gave the sermons at the First Unity Church, and one of the ushers told me that the collection bowl she was holding had been empty prior to the first morning service. But when I talked about Spirit dropping coins on us, she looked down and saw coins in her collection bowl. And that's a wow. Jean is such an imp, and you'll notice your loved ones are exactly as they were when they weren't in a body. Jean was always an imp. He still is. Now, on my last night in St. Pete, I went to dinner alone. I watched a street light outside the restaurant remain off for a half hour, and suddenly I heard Jean say, "I'm going to turn the light on, and I'm going to make it burst like a fireball." And sure enough, he did. And I captured this manifestation on the camera on my phone, and I posted it on my social media pages. Check it out. That video is going to blow your mind. Talk about proving that the Spirit lives on. And you will see the light is unearthly. It is not the color of a commercial streetlight, and it is much brighter than any commercial streetlight is ever able to be. And last but not least, to make sure that I didn't wake up late and miss my flight home on Thursday, Jean made the battery-operated alarm clock go off at 6 a.m., and I hadn't set the alarm. I checked, and the pin was down, and I actually just set an alarm on my phone. But sure enough, just to show me he was present, he made that battery-operated alarm go off. So I'm going to take a brief break now, and when I come back, I'm going to give you an overview of all the ways for you to dialogue with your loved ones in spirit. Be back in a moment.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every second and fourth Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, a.k.a. Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in to find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. This show is for you, the listener, and Dr. Turndorf wants to hear from you. Call 866-338-9663 or 617-237-1234.
Take a journey to a place of the divine love within with Deborah Beauvais on the Love by Intuition show every first and third Sunday, 9 to 10 p.m. Our message is love in the purest form. The light within us all is a guide to recall our beginning, to learn to love self and humankind, to feel the higher power of our own divinity. To attract love, one needs to be love. Every first and third Sunday from 9 to 10 p.m., all part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network. What if everything that you've been taught about who you are and what life is has been untrue? Join Deborah Laval, host of Living in Quantum Love, where she'll explore and dissect the limiting beliefs and wrong understandings that have only served to keep us not only separate from one another, but from our own selves. Living in Quantum Love can be heard every third Sunday of the month at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. Join Deborah and take a leap to freedom. Are you sick of fighting with your life partner or spouse? Do you want to rekindle the spark? Join #1 international best-selling author Dr. Jamie Turndorf at the Omega Institute May 12th through the 14th and discover her proven 3-step method for turning conflict into connection and love that lasts a lifetime and beyond. Visit AskDrLove.com/live events to find out more and register today. That's AskDrLove.com/live events.
Join Dr. Bernie Siegel on Mind Health Matters every first Sunday at 8 p.m., all part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network. Bernie will draw from his inspirational personal journey, offering us special nuggets of his sacred wisdom. Listen in as Bernie reminds us to be fully engaged in life.
Do you believe that mankind can create a world whose priority is nurturing life? And that love and unity would be the foundation for this new paradigm? Soul on Air on the Dream Vision 7 radio network provides a unique service to our audience by personally researching solutions that align with our unique value tenets. With these stories, we seek to inspire awakening, awareness, and involvement. Tune in every fourth Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to co-create with us. And please visit us online at nowsharelove.org. This is our story to write. Let's make it a love story.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you yearn to get along better with your life partner or spouse, friends, family members, and even coworkers, Dr. Turndorf's book, Kiss Your Fights Goodbye, Dr. Love's 10 Simple Steps to Cooling Conflict and Rekindling Your Relationship, shows you how to turn conflict into connection for a lifetime of lasting love. Find out more about Kiss Your Fights Goodbye at AskDrLove.com. This is Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. This show is for you, the listener. If you're listening in real time, you can speak to Dr. Turndorf live by calling toll-free from the U.S. and Canada at 866-338-9663. Once again, here's Dr. Turndorf. Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every second and fourth Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, a.k.a. Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in to find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. This show is for you, the listener, and Dr. Turndorf wants to hear from you. Call 866-338-9663 or 617-237-1234.
Welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I had an interesting conversation with my engineer during the break. He asked me, are you a medium? And it's a very funny thing because when I was in Florida, people came from all over the state so that I could help them reconnect and dialogue with their loved ones in spirit. And many of them had been sent by mediums because mediums are not therapists. And, of course, some were also sent by therapists because therapists aren't mediums. So I'm bridging both worlds. And what I'm doing is very different from what straight mediums do. And I want to give you an example of the difference. And this example happened at Omega Institute. I went to see James Van Praagh, and this was before Love Never Dies was published. And I was in the audience, and he was doing readings for everybody. And most mediums act like megaphones to spirit. They give you evidence that your loved one is living on, but the evidence is not emotionally significant. They might say, oh, your loved one's favorite color was yellow, and he had a favorite book that he read, things like this that don't really relate to a relationship. Now, because I'm a therapist, I have noticed from the very beginning when I discovered that I could hear spirit, spirit gives me emotionally laden, emotionally significant information that they know I'm going to need to help my patient to heal unfinished business. So, for example, when I was at Omega and Van Praagh was doing readings, he singled out a man in the audience. And he said to the man, your wife is talking about your son. And the man kept insisting, I don't have a son, I don't have a son. And then Praagh was scratching his head. I don't get it. She keeps saying, your son, your son. Well, I heard what Van Praagh didn't hear, because don't forget, because I'm a shrink, the spirit not only brings information in a different way, but spirit helps me understand the emotional meaning behind the messages. And I heard the wife saying that her husband was now her son. He was her son, and she was going to reparent and heal him. So during the break, I gingerly walked up to this guy, and I said to him, listen, may I tell you what your wife was trying to say? And he said, please. And then I said, she was trying to say you're her son and she wants to reparent you. And he burst into tears, and he said, oh, my gosh, she promised me that when she left her body, that's exactly what she would do. Thank you so much. This has been so helpful to me. So there's a really good encapsulated example of the difference between straight mediumship and my transdimensional grief method. Now, tonight, I want to give you an overview of the various ways for you to dialogue with your loved ones in spirit. And the methods that I'm going to talk about tonight are thought induction, dreams, automatic writing, prayer, dialoguing with the help of open vessels, which can be human or animal open vessels, and dialoguing using earthly props, which are generally electronic devices. So let's start with thought induction. You're going to notice that spirits often signal their presence by entering your thoughts. And when this happens, a thought that you know isn't your own suddenly pops into your head. For example, I'm going to give you an example of my first airplane trip to Florida a few months following Jean's bodily departure. And I was so bereft to be traveling without him in body. And suddenly, the thought popped into my mind that the seat next to me would remain unoccupied for the flight because Jean was sitting in it. And a few minutes later, the flight attendant announced over the public address system that since the flight was overbooked, and there are no open seats, please make sure to remove all personal belongings from all seats. To my astonishment, despite the overbooking, that seat beside me was never taken. And I knew that this was a sign from Jean that he was flying beside me. And he spoke to me through thought induction and told me that's exactly what he was doing. So pay attention to thoughts that pop into your mind out of nowhere, because that's one way that spirit dialogues with you. Now, as I spoke with the woman in the next seat in our 3-seat row configuration, she told me the story of her life. And among other things, she said that after her husband left his body, she found another great love, even though she was older. So I wondered, is Jean trying to tell me what was coming down the pike? All I knew was that Jean put his stamp on this communication because the woman's surname was French, and it was the same name as many of Jean's relatives. So I realized Jean was dialoguing with me through this open vessel, this woman, and telling me that I am the great love of his life. Now, here is another beautiful example of how your loved ones dialogue with you through dreams. Soon after Jean left his body, he dialogued with me in an amazing dream. This is what happened. I was weeping one morning, and I fell asleep. And suddenly I felt Jean's arms wrapping around me, and he said, "Can you feel me holding you, my love?" And I answered, "Promise you'll never leave me." And I heard him say in my dream, "As if I could." And I felt a wave of peace and joy and a drugged sleepiness like after sex. And then he said, "Lie with me now and sleep." And I slept for nearly 2 hours, feeling his presence beside me even as I slept. And he embraced me with such passion. And I felt his arms wound tightly around me. And I felt him pressing himself against my womb, just like he did when he hugged me in life. And when he used to embrace me like that, I'd always laugh and say, "There's gravy in that hug." And in my sleep, he kissed my lips passionately, and I heard him even clear his throat, as he often did in life. I saw his cleft chin, and I saw an imaginary camera circling the scene, capturing every aspect, angle, and detail. And he spoke to me. He dialogued with me, and he spoke words of love. He told me that he was giving me all of himself and more, even more than he did in life. And then I awoke. And I realized when I awoke that when my conscious mind is asleep, and when your conscious mind is asleep, you're even more receptive to spirit. There was no question Jean had just been with me, and that experience was nothing like an ordinary dream state. While dreams are disjointed, a dream visitation from spirit is a cohesive experience. It feels like your loved one enters your psyche and preempts your sleep with an announcement, "We interrupt this broadcast." And I noticed that the experience was very lifelike and vividly detailed to the point of being super real. It seemed in technicolor. And so the point is, when your conscious mind is asleep, your brain is more receptive to spirit. And many people are only open enough to be contacted during dreams. And the good news is that as I teach you my transdimensional grief method, you're going to learn to switch to the superconscious part of your brain. And that part of your brain that's active during dream states, you can learn to access when you're awake. Now, in addition to my own dream visitations and dream dialogues with Jean, on more than one occasion, Jean has entered my patient's dreams, which is so interesting. The first time my patient Candy saw him was in a dream. She had never met him in life, never even saw a photo of him. And after she told me that he came to her, I showed her his photo, and she said that was the man. And this was before Love Never Dies had been published, so there were no photos of Jean on the web. And a couple weeks after that, Teresa was going through a painful divorce. She was another patient of mine, and she said that a man she didn't know came to her in the middle of the night. And she said she was awakened out of a sound sleep, and she saw Jean sitting beside the bed. And he had a remarkable smile and dialogued with her energetically by sending her the message that she would be fine. And Teresa also had never met Jean or seen a photo of him. And I brought out a photo of Jean for her, and she said, yep, that was the man who reassured her in the night. Now, the next way that you can dialogue is by using what's called automatic writing. Now, how did I discover this way of dialoguing? Right after Jean left his body, I found that the silence was breaking my eardrums. It felt more deafening than the loudest shouts. So I started speaking to Jean out loud. And then I just naturally started writing as I spoke to him. And hearing my voice in the air helped ease my loneliness since I was accustomed to audible conversations with Jean. Now, at first, I only spoke my own pain, but I soon discovered that writing to Jean was a form of verbal meditation, and in no time, Jean's words started pouring from my pen. I didn't even pause to think or reflect. There was no imposition of reason or conscious thought. I just wrote. And the process felt similar to free associating. And soon Jean became my fingers, Jean was my pen, and then Jean was guiding me to speak his words aloud as I wrote. And through this automatic writing, I was discovering that we could dialogue with each other. And the next thing I knew, Jean was sharing all kinds of information about our soul's purpose on earth, the role suffering plays in soul development, fate and destiny, and even the afterlife. And it was so clear that he wanted me to record all that he was saying and write a book on the topic so I could share his wisdom with the world. And it wasn't long before I found myself speaking to Jean even when I wasn't writing in my notebook. And I was talking to him out loud every chance I had. And this was the beginning of our regular direct dialogues. And you're going to learn much more in the weeks and months to come about how to have direct dialogues with your loved ones in spirit. And for now, I just want to talk to you about another form of dialogue that is prayer. Now, this is quite an amazing thing because, you know, I was raised by two devoutly atheist parents, and I never prayed in my life. But one day, while I was driving, I felt the need to expand my dialogues with Jean and actually pray to him. And I'd been thinking about my friend Emily's loneliness and her desire to find a life partner. So I prayed aloud to Jean, and I said, please help my friend Emily find love. When I completed the prayer, I felt overtaken by a tidal wave of love that drowned me in euphoria. And I knew this was Jean's way of acknowledging that he had heard my prayer. I looked at the clock on my dashboard. It was 5:45. That night, Emily called me, and she said, Jean, whom she'd never met, never even saw a photo of Jean, came to her at exactly 5:45, and she said that she fell into a trance during which Jean told her to find love, follow the gravestones to the church in your neighborhood. Well, this made no sense to her, but she obeyed and went to the church, and that was the last she told me about her visitation and dialogue with Jean. Now, it was obvious that Jean's purpose in having her call me was to prove to me that he had heard my prayer to him. So by appearing to her and repeating the exact wording of my prayer to him, please help her find love, and then having her report these words to me was his way of closing the loop to prove his presence beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, the next week, Emily told the story in our professional group, and she said that Jean had led her to the Claremont Church. She hadn't told me this during our phone call. At this moment, another member of our professional group, a former seminarian, said, oh my gosh, the Claremont Church is the only liberation seminary in New York. And as I have mentioned many times, Jean was the founder of the liberation theology movement. So sending my friend to that church as opposed to any other church was Jean's way of putting his stamp on that miracle to further prove that he had heard my prayer and that he was responding to it. And sending her to that church was also a gift to her. So each time I pray to Jean for someone else and I dialogue with him through prayer, I'm twice blessed because in bringing a miracle to another person, Jean also reminds me of his loving presence in my life. And in this case, by appearing to my friend and guiding her to fulfill my prayer, he was proving to me that he heard my communication to him. Isn't that lovely? Absolutely lovely. Now, we're going to take a break, and when I come back, we're going to talk about how you can dialogue using open vessels. Be back with you in a moment on Love Never Dies Radio.
Love Never Dies is now on the Dream Vision 7 radio network every second and fourth Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Dr. Jamie Turndorf, a.k.a. Dr. Love, is the #1 international best-selling author of Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased. If you're grieving the loss of a loved one, tune in to find out how to reconnect and heal any unfinished business using Dr. Turndorf's groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique. This show is for you, the listener, and Dr. Turndorf wants to hear from you. Call 866-338-9663 or 617-237-1234.
When my beloved husband died of a bee sting, I wanted to die and join him. But his astonishing spirit manifestations proved to me that we don't die and our relationships aren't meant to end with bodily death. To honor his request that I let our love shine like a torch that lights the path for others, I wrote the #1 international bestseller, Love Never Dies, which tells our eternal love story and introduces my new method for reconnecting and making peace with the deceased. Hi, I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I invite you to join me starting March 17th for my week-long visit to Unity St. Pete, Florida, where I will teach you how to say hello, not goodbye, to your loved ones in spirit, and even heal any unfinished business that remains. If you're ready to transform your grief to joy, visit AskDrLove.com/live events to find out more and register today. That's AskDrLove.com/live events.
Are you sick of fighting with your life partner or spouse? Do you want to rekindle the spark? Join #1 international best-selling author Dr. Jamie Turndorf at the Omega Institute May 12th through the 14th and discover her proven 3-step method for turning conflict into connection and love that lasts a lifetime and beyond. Visit AskDrLove.com/live events to find out more and register today. That's AskDrLove.com/live events.
Join us every second Sunday at 7 p.m. for Living on Purpose with Carolyn Romano, where we explore the mysteries, meaning, and sometimes madness of life. Let's figure out together the ways we're meant to serve and become the fullest expressions of our most authentic selves. Let's figure out together how to create lives of balance, abundance, and joy. This program is part of the Dream Vision 7 radio network.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. If you can't stop crying over the bodily loss of a loved one, Dr. Turndorf's #1 international bestseller, Love Never Dies, How to Reconnect and Make Peace with the Deceased, will show you how to toss out the tissues and transform your grief into joy using her groundbreaking new Dialoguing with the Departed technique that enables you to reconnect and even heal unfinished business with those in spirit without the assistance of a medium, channeler, or psychic. Sign up for Dr. Love's free newsletter at AskDrLove.com and receive an exciting gift, a free excerpt of Love Never Dies. And now, back to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back to Love Never Dies Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and in this episode, I'm talking with you about how to dialogue with your loved ones in spirit. And I promised before break to talk with you about how you can dialogue using human and animal open vessels. Now, loved ones in spirit often speak to us through what I call open vessels. And this is a term I've coined to describe beings that are open enough to either send or receive spirit communications. And since Jean's bodily departure, he's offered me numerous examples that all living beings are meant to be God's messengers, and that Jean and your loved ones enter animals and people's bodies in order to move them to communicate a message and love you and me in their name. Now, as Jean has shown me, now that the spirit is no longer contained in a physical vessel, he's able to move about freely and enter the open vessels in ways that weren't possible when he lived in a body. When you're indoors, domestic animals will be used very, very readily. And when you're outdoors, wild animals and insects are the obvious choices because they are particularly open. And, for example, I'm going to give you an example of this. On my return from my first trip to Florida that I mentioned before, I was feeling despondent about returning home without Jean. And just before my departure, while the plane was still on the tarmac, I saw a bug fly past my window, and I sensed that the bug was meant for me. And I heard Jean say, "Pay attention, it's for you." And suddenly the bug doubled back and landed on my window. And I looked closely, and I saw that it was not one bug, but two bugs. And they were mating. So Jean was telling me that we are mated for eternity. And he reached me in this simple and exquisite way using the only vehicle that he could find at that moment, an insect. Now, when an animal is being used to signal your loved one's presence, you'll notice the creature behaves out of character. If it's a bird, the bird might remain still, sitting on a branch, not flying for a long time. It may close its eyes. It may appear as if it's in a trance. It may sit beside you or follow you. Now, keep in mind, spirits will use birds and insects that fly to communicate with you because insects and birds are mobile by nature, and so they are adapted to being where spirit wants them to be at any given moment. So also I want to share with you how human spirits will use human open vessels to dialogue with you. Keep in mind, children are naturally open. In addition, people who are disabled and even the homeless can be more open if their struggles have torn down their walls. The terminally ill and the elderly are often more open because they're closer to leaving their bodies and closer to the spirit realm. So spirit will often use these messengers, even strangers, to communicate with you. For example, one day, my septic system suddenly failed, and I was distressed by the prospect of a considerable repair bill. And that day, my patient Candy told me that when she arrived for her session at my office, she saw Jean standing at the side of the house looking at the ground. And the location she described was exactly where the septic tank is located. And what's astonishing is the fact that none of my patients, including Candy, knew that I was having trouble with the septic system, and nobody knew the location of the tank. So Jean came to me through Candy, who is particularly receptive to spirit, and she never knew. Once again, she had never seen Jean, never even seen a photo of him. Isn't that marvelous? Now, I want to take a moment to talk with you about a couple of things that are coming up so that I make sure you're aware of everything that's happening. First of all, remember the Calling book. I mentioned it last week. The Calling book is based on a never-before-revealed Vatican cover-up that Jean uncovered while doing research out of his Vatican-based research center. And we would love you to read the book, and I've just asked my publisher to reduce the Kindle version price so that it's priced, I think they're going to put it at $2.99 so that everybody in the world can read about this amazing story. Now, how this book got published was the result of dialoguing, a direct dialogue with Jean. I began writing this book with him in the early 80s. Right after he and I began our relationship, he told me the secret that he uncovered, and I said, we got to write this novel. We never published it. For almost 37 years, we couldn't find a publisher, we couldn't find an agent. But then, 2 months ago, during my online Transdimensional Grief Method Coaches training class, which I hold over the internet on Zoom, we heard Jean saying something. We heard him, and I couldn't make out what he was saying. I sent the transcript to an afterlife researcher, and he wrote me back saying, I hear a man saying again and again, the calling, the calling, the calling. So Jean was dialoguing with me and telling me directly, now's the time, publish the calling. So the book is now out and available for you. And it's going to be in 34 languages very soon, and I've also read it as a Kindle book, so you'll be able to hear me read the book when it comes out in Kindle version. Now, I also want to invite you to come to the Omega Institute May 12th through May 14th. I am going to be teaching my conflict resolution method, and this is the only workshop that I'm going to be giving this entire year where I spell out my conflict resolution method. And if you are ready to stop fighting with those you love, this is the event you need to attend. I'm going to teach you how to resolve conflicts with friends, family members, your spouse or significant other, colleagues, and even wayward teens. And I want you to know, conflict is inevitable in our intimate relationships. Most of us believe that conflict and fighting are synonymous, but they are not the same. And I will show you at Omega my gentle, loving, and proven method for resolving conflicts. And you're just going to become closer and stronger. You're going to understand the chemistry of fighting. You're going to practice identifying and eliminating fight traps, which are the faulty fighting tactics that we all use. I'm going to help you heal childhood scars that fuel your arguments. I'm going to give you confidence so you can address your sexual needs without them becoming big, big battles of the bulge. I'm going to show you to deepen your capacity for empathy and listening. I'm going to show you how to initiate a positive confrontation and how to have constructive negotiations. And my method will work whether you're young or older, gay or straight, married or dating. And I will also help bereaved individuals use my conflict resolution method during my wonderful weekend at Omega Institute. And you can find out more about this at AskDrLove.com/live events. Also, I got a call a couple weeks ago from Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, the star of The Secret and the leader of the Agape Church, and he asked me to come and do a Love Never Dies workshop at his center in Costa Rica. It's called Rhythmia, and that is going to be an awesome week, October 22nd through 29th. I'll be working with you live for an entire week, helping you create a state of receptivity, helping you dialogue, helping you heal your unfinished business. Now, I also want to announce, and this is the first time I'm mentioning this, I am offering for the first time ever, a free teleseminar this coming Wednesday, the 29th, at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight, Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight, and Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight. I'm going to share with you the 3 reasons why most people get stuck in overwhelming sadness and the 3 ways to get past the pain and even find greater joy and fulfillment in life. This is the first free teleseminar I have ever offered. It's a worldwide event. And the way you can join, the best way is if you haven't already signed up for my newsletter at AskDrLove.com, make sure you come right now as soon as the show ends, sign up, and you will receive a notice for how to connect to this teleseminar. And after the teleseminar, when you stay till the very end, I'm going to give you a free gift, a special gift, and I'm going to do a live question and answer session. So I'm very excited to be able to do this with you and have a live connection. I also want to make sure you know about my Love Club. Now, when I was down in Florida and I did all the dialogues with so many people who had come in from all over Florida to have me help them begin their dialogues with the departed, every single one began an incredible transformation. But every single one of them knew that it was just the beginning. And so many signed up for my Love Club, which will be beginning in a week. And over the past 10 years, I've discovered one thing that holds true for everyone that I've helped to reconnect, be it on the Hay House radio show or at live events. After you experience the joy of reconnecting, you need help to stay connected. And this is because life has a way of knocking us off our spiritual towers. It's just the way it is. Maybe you're stressed out one day, or you're sick, or you're tired, or a holiday or a special occasion rolls around, and you start to feel sad, and you start to miss your loved one. And the next thing you know, your vibration lowers, your connection slips away, and now you're even more bummed out because you've known the joy of reconnection, and now it feels like you're really falling from a mountaintop. So when the connection feels broken, you get even more depressed, and that lowers your vibration even more, and that makes you even more disconnected. Now here's another thing I've discovered. When you lose your connection, you need help to get back on track. So in addition to the stresses of life just keeping you disconnected and marinating in misery, the misery of disconnection, there's another little-known reason why it's so hard to reconnect and stay connected to your loved one in spirit. And the reason is unfinished business. Unfinished business has a terrible way of pinning us in place. In the same way that you can't push away from the table if you haven't had a meal, until you reconnect and resolve your unfinished business with your loved and hated ones in spirit, you remain stuck. And for so many people, grief never ends because we're actually grieving over never having had the chance to work it out with our loved ones. Can't tell you how many times people told me in this last week when I helped them dialogue that when their loved one left their body, they became so deeply depressed because they felt that they had lost all hope of working it out. So I want to remind you that it is never too late to heal your unfinished business. And in fact, you often have to wait until your loved one leaves his or her body in order to work it out. That's why one of my patients said to me, Jamie, I wish my mother would hurry up and die already so I can work this out. Why? Because when we leave our bodies, we receive a life review that shows us how we went wrong with our loved ones on the earth plane. And that means our loved ones in spirit are now ready to work it out with us. And so I've created the Love Club, my private, exclusive, members-only online group where I am going to work with you personally to help you reconnect, stay connected, and heal any unfinished business that remains. And just like it takes time to heal troubled relationships on the earth plane, the same holds true for relationships with those in spirit. Healing a troubled relationship with someone in spirit takes time and patience, and it takes guidance. And what I've noticed over the last 10 years in working with those who are bereaved, I've noticed that everyone needs not only help to reconnect and stay connected, but also that everyone needs my guidance to oversee their dialogues, especially if there's unfinished business that needs healing. And the good news is if you let me help you, you're going to experience such tremendous healing. It's going to set you free and transform your life in ways you can't even begin to imagine. And you're going to see that reconnecting, staying connected, and healing unfinished business is the secret to lifting you from the pit of despair and bringing you into the light of joy and love. Reconnecting is the only way to transform tears of grief into tears of joy. And there's just something magically healing about working with me in a loving and supportive group setting, because the combined energies of all the group members elevate your vibration. There's an exponential elevation of everyone's vibration, making it that much easier for you to reconnect, stay connected, and heal. And so for all these reasons, I knew I had to create the Love Club for you to give you the ongoing support and guidance that you need. Now, you can find out about the Love Club at AskDrLove.com/the Love Club. And join me for my free teleseminar this week, because I'm going to give you lots more information about the Love Club. And when you join me at the teleseminar, I'm also going to give you a very special free gift. But you have to attend the teleseminar to claim the free gift. So next week, on the next show, which will be 2 Sundays from now, we're going to be talking about how to create a state of receptivity. Now, receptivity is extremely important because for most people, the noise of the day, the constant hustle and bustle, and the never being still or quiet is sufficient to keep you disconnected from your loved one. That's why Jean said to me right after he left his body, Jamie, the noise of the day drowns me out. Anytime you want to hear me, come to the bed and be still and quiet, and you will be able to reconnect with me. So in the next Love Never Dies show, I'm going to show you how to create a state of receptivity so that you are tuned to the superconscious mind state and more available to send and receive energetic signals to and from the spirit realm. Now, I'm not saying you have to turn your condo or your co-op into a convent, but you need to create what I call pockets of peace moments, where you sit in silence, you turn the TV, the radio off, you turn your cell phone off, and you just sit in silence and reconnect. And that's what we're going to do next time on Love Never Dies. And don't forget to join me this week for my teleseminar, where I'm going to show you how to reconnect and transform your grief to joy. See you next time on Love Never Dies Radio.
You're listening to Love Never Dies with Dr. Jamie Turndorf. Is your heart still hurting over the bodily loss of your loved one? The reason is simple. We're not meant to be separated from those we love. And reconnecting is the only solution. But reconnecting and staying connected requires guidance. That's why Dr. Turndorf has created her exclusive members-only Love Club, a private, intimate, and loving online group where she'll personally guide you to reestablish your relationship with your loved one in spirit and even resolve any issues that remain. If you're ready to discover the healing and joy of reconnecting, visit AskDrLove.com/The Love Club and apply for a seat. But don't wait. To keep the group intimate, seats are limited. Visit AskDrLove.com/The Love Club and request to join today. That's AskDrLove.com/The Love Club.